Even in murder, God works in mysterious ways. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, April 17th, 1986. A devout man finishes his nightly prayers at synagogue. This isn't just any night. It's the first night of Passover, the holiday where Jews remember their liberation from slavery in ancient Egypt. But not everybody is celebrating tonight. Pittsburgh police get a tip. A gang of armed robbers is about to strike again. There's been a shooting in Squirrel Hill, Pittsburgh's affluent Jewish neighborhood. Hot on the trail of the robbers, they red ball it to the scene.
I say it took us only approximately 3 to 5 minutes to get to this area. As I jumped out of the vehicle, I ran over to him and I asked what had happened. And he says, I'm shot.
In true crime, investigation and conviction may take years. But every detective knows that the crucial clue is always there, somewhere in the first 72 hours. Nearly 20 years after that fateful night, Constable Stagina can still remember the face of that frightened young man.
He gave me his name at the scene. It was Neil Rosenblum, and he told me he was a rabbinical student, and he was living, I think, in Canada at the time. I tried to make him comfortable. We tried to cover him up because he was cold. He started showing me his wounds at the time. I could see one in his wrist, and when I opened his coat, I could see blood in his shirt around his chest area. I asked him what happened.
Neil says he was on his way back from synagogue when a car drove up. The man in the passenger seat asked for directions.
He said, I'd step off the curb to give him assistance. They just shot me. They shot me for no apparent reason.
Neil describes his attackers. 2 white men driving a black Corvette.
Black Corvette?
I says, you sure it wasn't 2 black guys and 2 black females in a dark colored sedan? He says, no, it's definitely a black Corvette.
Now, Stagina knows that the men who shot Neil Rosenblum are not the armed robbers he's looking for. He asks for a more detailed description of the shooter, but the paramedics need to get Neil to the hospital.
He asked me, he said, am I gonna die? At that time, I assured him that he wasn't. He then asked me while they were working on him if I would go get his wife.
Neil's wife and her family have been waiting for him to begin the Passover celebration. Instead, they hear about the shooting.
His wife she was beside herself. You could just tell, she couldn't believe that it happened. She was asking so many questions and I couldn't answer them, you know what I mean? Why? What happened, just all I could say was, he was shot. We're still investigating,
Stagina offers to drive her to the hospital. But when they arrive, they hear the shocking news. Neil has died in surgery. Stagina never gets to ask him more questions. And Neil's wife never gets to say goodbye. The shooting of Neil Rosenblum is now a case of murder. Detective Ron Freeman takes charge at the scene. In the years since Neil's murder, he has worked on many other cases. Still, he remembers the details of this one, right down to the caliber of the bullets.
There were 2 .380 slugs, 2 .380 casings found at the scene, so we knew that the .380 had been used.
The bullets and shell casings are sent to a firearms lab to trace them to a gun. Police start canvassing the homes and apartments near the crime scene, looking for a witness.
We have several neighbors who heard what they thought were backfires, firecrackers. They eventually realized that they were gunshots. And based on everything, a composite of what the police were able to tell us and the neighbors, none saw anything.
The streets were empty because of Passover. At the lab, the 2 bullets recovered from Neil's body are added to the .380s found at the scene.
So what we had received were 4 full metal jacket bullets, 2, 3, and also a copper jacket fragment. All of these bullets were compared using the comparison microscope and found to be fired from the same firearm.
The firearms examiner analyzes the unique marks on the bullets made by the barrel, the firing pin, and the breech face of the .380, and she compares them to other bullets they have on file. If she finds a match, this could give police a solid lead to the killer, but the bullets don't match anything in their files.
So they were placed in what we call the open case file. And the open case file is a collection of bullets and cartridge cases recovered from crime scenes where no gun has been recovered.
Detective Freeman now turns to the family to see if they can help him find a motive for the shooting. He learns that Neil was 24 years old, studying to be a rabbi. Married for just over a year, he, his wife, and their baby daughter arrived in Pittsburgh earlier that day to spend Passover with his wife's parents.
And all we learned about him, that he was basically a very religious man and involved with his family very deeply.
Abraham Kurtz knew Neil since they were children.
He thought about other people, and he cared about other people, their needs, you know, how to make things better for his school, for his parents, for his wife. I mean, for whoever he met. He never did anything, said anything, and no harsh word ever came out of his mouth that you ever would have been in a fight with him.
Clearly, Neil Rosenblum had no enemies. That leads Freeman to one conclusion.
We could see no reason for him being shot other than the way he was dressed. I felt initially, as did everybody else, that this was a hate crime. This was an especially difficult case for us because the victim, again, was truly an innocent person.
Neil's body is flown home to Toronto and buried according to Jewish law. His parents are devastated. The Jewish community is saddened by the random shooting and alarmed by the anti-Semitic overtones. In Pittsburgh, police move into high gear. The public is pressing for answers.
You need to find who would walk around our city or drive around our city and just choose a citizen at random because of the way they're dressed and kill them. That's a serious situation.
Police get thousands of calls pointing the finger at anti-Semitic groups and racist organizations.
And we had to track all of those down because you don't know where it's going to lead. It just took us off in every direction imaginable.
Amidst this flurry of time-consuming activity, police stay on their only solid leads, the .380 gun and the black Corvette.
And we started looking at every .380 that was registered in Allegheny County, and then we tried to correlate that with anybody that had a Corvette and a .380.
Police also pull over any Corvette seen driving in and around Pittsburgh. They work around the clock, but still they have nothing on the Corvette and no suspect from the anti-Semitic groups. It's as though some spirit has come and committed the crime. With a hate killer on the loose, are the streets of Pittsburgh safe? Is the murderer looking for targets like Neil, who are wearing the distinctive clothing of Orthodox Jews? Nobody knows, and everybody's afraid. A year goes by, then two. Neil Rosenblum's family and friends commemorate the anniversary of his murder. A somber occasion made sadder by their belief that this was a senseless hate crime. They're not the only ones who remember. Although the case has ground to a halt, Pittsburgh police haven't given up.
We were always aware of it, always thinking about it, always talking about it in the office. And then at some point, we got a call from an attorney, and the attorney told us about a client of his who had information on this case.
By a strange coincidence, it's 2 years, almost to the day, since Neil's murder. The client's name is David Green, and he's serving time on a drug conviction. Since Green has been in prison, he's been sharing a cell with another guy who's also in on drug charges. First, he thought that would give them something in common. Pretty quickly, though, Green realizes that his cellmate was nothing like him. He saw the guy drawing a swastika. Then he started complaining to Green about the Jews. Eventually, he told Green that he hated Jews so much, he and his buddy Mike spotted one near a synagogue a few years back. They drove up to the rabbi and whacked him.
Dad, smoked him!
Why is Green coming forward with this? Because he's afraid. His cellmate doesn't know that he's Jewish. If it gets out, he could be next on this guy's hit list. He wants police to move him to a new cell in exchange for his cooperation. But a convicted heroin user isn't the most credible informant. Freeman needs to verify Green's story. His first step is to check out his cellmate, Stephen Tilsch.
We learned through other government agencies that were investigating him, federal agencies and local agencies, that Stephen Tilsch was a mid-sized drug dealer in the outskirts of Pittsburgh. And then we looked at gun registrations everywhere, every way we could with him, but as a convicted felon, he didn't have anything legally registered to him.
So far, nothing corroborates Green's story. Until Freeman checks motor vehicle records. Turns out, Tilsch is the owner of a black Corvette. He got a speeding ticket days after Neil's murder. Police try to locate the car. No luck. The black Corvette has vanished into thin air. Police know from Green that Tilsch was with a buddy that night. They track him down. His name is Mike O'Grady, another known drug dealer. They pick up O'Grady on the street for questioning. He remembers that he was with Tilsch on the night in question. They were renovating a house near Squirrel Hill. When they were ready to knock off for the day, he admits they tanked up on booze and drugs, got in Tilsch's Corvette and started cruising the streets. Tilsch did have a gun, but he was only goofing around, taking pot shots at street signs and traffic lights, like he often did. As for shooting a rabbi, O'Grady says Tilsch would never do that. He's a bit wild, but not a killer. Detective Freeman believes that O'Grady's lying, but his hands are tied.
He knew that we couldn't force him to say anything. We couldn't force him to take a polygraph. We couldn't force him to do anything. But we thought, we're on the right track now. Given time, we can flip him. We can convert him to our side.
Once again, all Freeman can do is wait. He knows it's only a matter of time before O'Grady gets caught doing another drug deal. That's when he'll have the leverage to get the truth about Stephen Tilsch. But O'Grady keeps his nose clean. 3 years go by. At the scene of another shooting for armed robbery, police recover a weapon. The gun is sent to the same firearms examiner who worked on the Rosenblum case.
It's the kind of gun that you see in the movies, all the bad guys, all the drug lords and things like that.
She compares the bullets from this gun to others on file. It's a routine check. But she finds a match to the gun that killed Neil Rosenblum. The question is, can it be linked to Tilsch?
There was no manufacturer stamped into the frame of the firearm, and there was no serial number on the firearm.
This is no accident. The gun is homemade, put together by someone with criminal intent.
Gun manufacturers found this loophole, and they could send you a kit, and it didn't have a serial number, and there's no way to trace this.
Freeman expected the murder weapon to crack open the case. Instead, another disappointment. But he's still clinging to one last ray of hope, that Mike O'Grady will talk. Then, in a strange twist of events, Freeman is called to the scene of a car crash. The driver is seriously injured. It's Stephen Tilsch, recently released from jail and apparently, once again, out for a drunken joyride. The passenger is none other than Mike O'Grady. The accident has claimed his life.
I mean, he was our link, and it was very frustrating because now he's dead. And every time something positive developed, then there was something horrible that would jump up and stymie the investigation, and we couldn't go any further.
Call it an act of God, call it pure coincidence. Freeman's last hope is now crushed. After 5 long years, the case goes stone cold. But the detective won't let it go. 13 years after Neil's murder, his wife has remarried. His daughter has grown up without knowing her father. His parents still mourn the loss of their innocent son. Given the evidence so far, a drug-addled jailhouse snitch, an untraceable murder weapon, and the only eyewitness killed by the suspect himself, hoping to crack the case has become an act of faith.
Some cases you just cannot forget. Other cases you can. But there are some cases that homicide detectives just will not forget, and they will not let them go away. And this was one of them.
After so many years, Freeman's faith is mysteriously rewarded. A new murder case lands on his plate. He's pretty sure the junkie who's been arrested knows more about this case than he's told police.
And so we said, we know that you have information on a murder, thinking it was murder B. And he said, well, yes. And then he started talking about Tilsch, murder A.
Freeman cannot believe what he's hearing. It turns out that a few months ago, while buying drugs from Tilsch, the junkie heard him brag about gunning down a Jew. It's the same story that Freeman had heard from the first informant, David Green. How Tilsch hated Jews, how he whacked the rabbi.
And it was just one of those wonderful flukes. It was serendipitous how that came up, and it just fell into our lap.
Freeman decides he now has enough to arrest Tilsch for murder. The DA decides to go for the max, murder 1, premeditated murder. But Tilsch comes to court exuding confidence. According to his lawyer, the DA's case isn't strong enough to get a conviction. The prosecution has little physical evidence, and the 2 jailhouse snitches should be easy to discredit. The prosecution will have to present a very strong case. On the stand, Green describes what Stephen Tilsch told him about the murder. That night, Tilsch and his buddy, Mike O'Grady, went for a ride in the black Corvette. He let O'Grady drive because his license had been suspended. For a couple of months, Tilsch had been hassled by a Jewish federal attorney about his drug dealing. Tilsch was out for blood, and that night he steered O'Grady to the Jewish neighborhood. The bizarre circumstances leading to Neil's death are put together by Detective Freeman. Neil was alone, walking the few blocks to his in-laws. The Passover service had just ended.
Had the service lasted another 3 minutes, they would never have met. Had it ended 3 minutes earlier, they probably would never have met.
But they did meet. Tilch was armed with a fully loaded, untraceable gun. He lured Neil to his car and then he shot him 4 times. All actions that speak of deliberate intent. And because God works in mysterious ways, Neil remained conscious just long enough to give police the crucial clue which led to solving his own murder 13 years later. 2 white men in a black Corvette. A jury turns down murder 1, but convicts Stephen Tilch of 3rd-degree murder and sentences him to the max. 20 years for the death of Neil Rosenblum. Getting a conviction is a victory for Detective Freeman, who fought so long to solve this vicious crime.
One's out looking to commit a hate crime, and the other is practicing peace and love and harmony. And here we lost a wonderful, compassionate person to one who hates.
After 13 long years, Neil Rosenblum's parents can finally put their ordeal behind them. They had an affectionate nickname for their son, Nuti Shalom. May peace go with you, Nuti. The stories on 72 Hours are true. The detectives and forensic scientists are the ones who actually worked on the case. The names of the victims are fictitious. The names of the convicted are real.